We knew that we were going to log on at some point today. Didn't know it was going to be for this explosive of a reason, though, Dalton. Sauce Gardner has just been traded from the New York Jets to the Indianapolis Colts for a price of 2 first-round picks, a first-round pick this year, a first-round pick next year, and A.D. Mitchell as well. Dalton, you are our resident Jets, basically everything. Talk to me about this trade. My jaw is on the floor that this happened, and talk to me about where your thoughts are right now, because we'll dig into the numbers and why it makes sense for both teams.
No, it is. It's as shocking as any trade I've seen, actually, because even if the Jets were going to have a fire sale, you figured, okay, Breece Hall, Quincy Williams, maybe a Jermaine Johnson, right? Or maybe the biggest name traded would have been Quinnen Williams, the defensive tackle. I was going into this deadline thinking, okay, maybe there's a possibility the Jets could trade anybody except for the two guys that they just signed, Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver. Now that that's been broken, you just wonder about what the direction is of the Jets. Obviously, this season they're punting on it. It was always going to be the case. But, yeah. I mean, how far into the future now are they looking, especially considering they just had signed both of these guys to 4-year extensions, right? Gardner just signed a 4-year, $120 million deal, and now he's going to be in Indianapolis long-term on a team that apparently believes that they are a real-deal Super Bowl contender, that they can compete
100%.
With Kansas City and Buffalo and any other team that's emerging, maybe New England right now, too, in the AFC. So, no, this is as shocking and unexpected a trade as I've ever seen, because I thought there were two guys on this team that were untouchable, and that was Gardner and Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, well, I think that would have been the case, because I don't know if the Jets ever thought that they would have gotten 2 first-round picks for Sauce Gardner. Like 2 first-round picks is like quarterback territory. It's top of the pass rusher market, like what we saw from Micah Parsons type of category. But like for a corner, I don't know if we've ever seen this type of value. I can't think of one off the top of my head. So especially with Sauce Gardner on that contract, right? It's one thing to be, signing, the beginning of the contract or getting to negotiate that contract when you trade for somebody. But I can't think of off the top of my head something like this, where this player is under this massive contract that you did not negotiate, that you were trading 2 first-round picks for at a position that Sauce, we'll get into the numbers here in a second, is kind of highly volatile. So if the Jets are totally rebuilding a lot of this, and we knew that Aaron Glenn came in to change the culture of everything, if for whatever reason they didn't think that Sauce Gardner matched the culture, I'm not saying that I know that for sure, but clearly if they didn't think that he matched the culture of where they were going, to get 2 first-round picks and A.D. Mitchell, which isn't just some throwaway. I mean, he was a throwaway with where he was in the Colts because he was behind a very deep wide receiver room. But when you and I were talking right before we went live, A.D. Mitchell could easily be wide receiver 2 on this team. And so now you get 2 first-round picks and potentially your wide receiver 2 if he works out. For the Jets, if you were entertaining this at all whatsoever, which clearly they were, the price is actually pretty damn good, and honestly one that I think would have been higher than anything that would have been possible to get for a cornerback.
It reminded me, and I don't think we've seen a bigger cornerback trade since. I'm almost certain we haven't, but it reminded me of when Jacksonville traded to Jalen Ramsey to the Rams. That deal was for 2 1s and a 4th-round pick. So that's basically the most comparable thing that we have, and that's, again, arguably at the time the best corner in football in his prime, going for 2 1s and a 4. This is for 2 1s and A.D. Mitchell, like you just mentioned. No, but it is just shocking. And I think as far as the Jets getting those assets back, you could argue that 2027 first-round pick is the most valuable thing in this trade, with what we're expecting that draft class to be, and how bad now we're expecting the Jets to be, especially without Sauce Gardner. So you've got 2 first-round picks this year, you've got 2 next year in a potentially epic draft class. Any one of those 4 first-rounders is going to be on a quarterback. Then maybe you talk about a Jeremiah Smith or maybe a Leonard Moore, the cornerback from Notre Dame, eventually to replace Sauce Gardner, and all those options. And the Jets are maybe going to be the most fun draft team over the next couple of years with where they're going to be picking. But no, this has just shocking ramifications for both franchises all the way around. And it's quite a bold move from Chris Ballard. And he's certainly someone who's known to make bold moves like this, but this might be his biggest yet.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it has to be. I mean, Chris Ballard can make bold moves, but also he loves his draft picks. He's been somebody who, in years past, maybe not wanting to give up as much as he would have needed to make a trade up, or just, trade for a certain player. Like Chris Ballard, he comes up through the scouting circle. He loves the NFL draft. I cannot believe that they made this trade for that type of a price. So I'm looking at it right now. We are 9 weeks into the NFL season. If you just look at the cornerback position, the Indianapolis Colts, a 60.2 team grade, coverage grade for just their corners this season. That is 15th in the NFL. And then the EPA per play allowed, which obviously means it's EPA per pass because it's a coverage statistic here. That is also 15th in the NFL. There have been games where we have seen the Colts really struggle at the cornerback position. And Dalton, there has not been a more valuable corner than Sauce since he has come into the league. Since that 2022 season, he has a cumulative WAR of a 2.19, which is first amongst all corners over that stretch of time. And then the average season WAR, as well as just over half a win, is number one for corners. And so, look, it's not always pretty because I think the cornerback position is very volatile week to week, season to season, all of that. But if you want a guy who has the traits and the talent to be able to come up huge for you in some of the biggest games where very clearly the Colts think that they're going, this addresses the Colts' biggest weakness with a superstar type of a player.
Absolutely agree. I mean, I remember a couple weeks ago on one of the shows, we had somebody in the chat talking about, man, the Colts really need another pass rusher, a defensive end, and then the secondary will get better from there. And I argued, look, cornerback is their biggest need on the outside. Now, when Charvarius Ward is healthy, he's been really good yet this year, but they've been running a lot of guys out there that don't need to be playing starting snaps, right? Mekhi Blackmon has struggled. Jalen Jones has struggled. And Sauce Gardner is as sure a bet as you can get on the outside at cornerback, right? Last year, even that was his lowest full season grade last year in coverage of 73. That was really due to like 2 bad games. Otherwise, he's stellar. You mentioned leading the league in WAR since he's been in the league. He leads the league in coverage grade. He leads the league in forced incompletions. He only allows roughly 47% of passes in his direction to be completed. That's an elite rate. You're getting arguably the best corner in football, no question. The Colts paid a heavy price for it, but you're right. They are fixing now their biggest flaw, and that was cornerback, because the question to me going into the playoffs for the Colts, assuming they get there, is even in their big regular seasons, right, in the regular season games, when they have to play in-division opponents like Houston, what is their answer for Nico Collins? What is their answer for Brian Thomas? When they play Kansas City in a couple weeks, hell, when they play Atlanta this week in London, who knows if Sauce will be available, but how are they going to cover Drake London, ironically enough with the name? But I mean, it's just one of those things where you look at number one receivers against the Colts and you go, how in the world are they going to cover those guys? The game earlier this year against the Rams, they had no answer for Puka Nacua at all, right? Not that many teams do, but with Sauce Gardner, he's one of the few answers you have for one of those guys. When they play the Houston Texans and it's a grinded-out defensive game and they need to be able to cover Nico Collins, Sauce Gardner is one of the few guys in the league who can do that. So it changes the entire complexion of Lou Anarumo's defense for sure.
And look, we said at the very top of the show, like this is a very high price to be paid. I don't think any other team in the NFL would have been paying this price. And to be honest with you, I don't know if Sauce was sort of like on the trade block. I don't think that they were just going to like move him for anything, even like one first round pick. I'm not convinced they would have moved Sauce for a first round pick, maybe in a first round pick and change. But the fact that this was the most that I believe that they were going to get from any team, that's sort of what gives you the ability to make this deal. And I think I see a lot of people saying like, hey, this has to be a Super Bowl type of a deal. And okay, like it kind of does, but it doesn't have to just mean that it is this season, because the Colts are rolling this season. They're 7-2. They're tied for the best record in the AFC, and the AFC is not as stacked as it has been in years past. So not only are they hitting the gas pedal for this season, Dalton, I just looked this up. They're free agents next year in 2026. Braden Smith is a free agent. Daniel Jones is a free agent. But outside of that, I mean, Alec Pierce is as well, Kwity Paye. But those guys, I mean, you're okay with replacing them or maybe being able to get them a little bit cheaper. Like, it's not like the Colts have a ton of players that they're going to have to re-sign. The tricky one is going to be Daniel Jones, but you make this deal for at least the window of the next 2 years here in which you are not having first round picks that you moved on from. So I don't quite think it's a Super Bowl or bust type of a trade for this year. I think it's kind of a Super Bowl or bust, very least NFC, AFC championship game or bust over the next 2 years is what I would give the window for this. So very, very high price for this player at this position with his contract. But the Colts are at a spot where they're going all in for it.
I know this is something generally talked about also with quarterbacks on rookie deals, right? But Daniel Jones, even assuming he re-signs or signs an extension with the Colts, is not going to get the $55 to $60 million contract per year that, some of these other younger quarterbacks have gotten. You would expect that to be somewhere in the range of a Baker Mayfield or a Sam Darnold, right? Maybe in the mid to high 30s, which still gives you some flexibility to take on a guy who is also now the highest paid corner in the league as well, because you do have Sauce Gardner now under team control until 2030. So you do have some flexibility knowing that if they keep Daniel Jones, at this point now, they're going to have to keep Daniel Jones. They don't have first round picks the next 2 years to replace him, right? So what I would expect on the heels of this, assuming Jones continues to play well, is probably something like a 3 or 4 year contract with the next 2 just about guaranteed. And they're going to try to keep adding pieces, and Shane Steichen's going to let it rip with Daniel Jones. And I think it's very interesting now where the Colts go, not just this year, but over the next 2 years, to add to their team, continue adding to this defense, continue maybe, like you mentioned, a replacement or maybe an extension for Braden Smith there at right tackle, maybe more running back depth. But now it appears they're just going to try to build around this core that they do have. They paid a heavy price to do it, but they're in win now mode all of a sudden without their two first round picks for the next couple of years.
Super Pony, I know, as a Colts fan, gave us a $5 super chat, says, as a Colts fan, I was ecstatic until I saw what we gave up. I don't know how to feel. It was a pretty penny, but obviously you are going for a Super Bowl, and with how well this team is playing, that's what you would want your general manager to do, especially with all with firing on all cylinders the way that they are. Now, quickly, let's talk a little bit about the Jets side of things, because I do want to touch on Rashid Shaheed as well. So the Jets are now, at this point, is Quinnen available? We talked about the potential moves that the Jets could have. Will McDonald, Jermaine Johnson, Quinnen Williams, but nobody brought up Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson, the two who maybe everybody else outside of the league, outside of maybe Quinnen Williams, would have wanted the most. We thought those were the two guys, like you mentioned, that were untouchable. What do you think from the Jets' perspective? Do you think that they're done? This is their splash move, and then ultimately, do you think this will be good for them in the end with these 2 first-round picks in each of the next 2 years to rebuild?
If they are just committing to the long haul, then, so be it at this point, right? You do 2 things by getting Sauce Gardner out. You pick up the 2 first-round picks. You mentioned it. You get a possible contributor in A.D. Mitchell, who just doesn't have any opportunity to play in Indianapolis. Now he might be your number 2 receiver in New York, and you continue to take phone calls. And if Sauce Gardner is available and can be had, everybody on the roster is. Maybe that even includes Garrett Wilson, to be honest with you, for a team that needs a receiver, right? But, there's rumors on, day 2 asking price, a day 2 pick for Jermaine Johnson and Breece Hall, maybe a Will McDonald. If that's the best way I can put it. If Sauce Gardner is available, they will take a phone call on anybody for the right price. It's very clear that the Jets know where they're at. And for as much as been talked about Aaron Glenn and losing games and all of this, the Jets came into this year darn well knowing that their roster was not good enough, even set as is. Now the question for Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn is, how long does it take us to build a competitive roster? And by the time we get to do that, then Sauce Gardner is inching towards 29, 30 years old. So I do get it from that angle. It's an extreme long-term approach, but maybe if you're going to tear it down, just tear it all the way down at this point. And that does raise the big question of Quinnen Williams, of Garrett Wilson. Are those guys now more available than ever? And are the Jets just going to stack up the most draft picks we've ever seen, especially for a 2026 class that's thought to be heavy on quarterbacks, but we have our questions about it. And then I'm telling you, if you can keep getting picks in this 2027 class, I know it's looking a long way ahead, but between the quarterbacks, the wide receivers, some of the players at impact positions are coming in that class, and to have 2 draft picks, to have 2 first-round picks in that class is going to be a major asset. So, look, the Jets, they're tearing it down. There's no other way to put it. They tried to Band-Aid it with Justin Fields and see where this roster is at, but I think they feel like now this roster as constructed is not going to get them anywhere, right? And they might as well just start building towards the, 3, 4, and 5 year future. That's what this is going to take, because that's where, it's already been 15 since we made the playoffs, so what's the difference in another 3 or 4 if you build it right?
Yeah, look, I think that for the Jets, if there wasn't already a lot of pressure for Aaron Glenn next season, now we're getting to the point where you're trading away a guy who was what we thought was a pillar of this roster, a fan favorite, somebody who the fans could at least hang their hat on as somebody who they had, who was one of the best in the league. You've now traded that player away, and if halfway through next year is not going well for this team, I think that's added pressure onto Aaron Glenn. So to me, next year is paramount for the New York Jets. Not only do they have to nail it in the draft, but they have to show considerable improvement, or else you're going to get in a spot where you go, well, okay, maybe we don't believe in Aaron Glenn anymore, and we don't want him to be the one to use the second set of 2 first-round picks. This could be something that accelerates the rebuild, but it could also accelerate wiping the slate clean with the current regime. So anytime you make a move like this, there's a ton of pressure. And I think now there's a ton of pressure on the Jets to nail it when you trade away a player like this, even for the return that you are getting back. Jacob gave us a $50 super chat. Jacob, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Consider the result for the Colts. The Colts cornerback room is now Mooney plus Sauce plus Moore. Leonard Moore, right? Is who this person is saying?
Kenny Moore. No, they wish they had Leonard Moore. You're looking in the future a little bit too far there for the Colts. They're not getting Leonard Moore.
I was getting the picks mixed up, and we're just talking about Leonard Moore. So okay, I mean, the cornerback room looks way better with Sauce. There's no question about it. Yeah, I mentioned they're right around the middle of the pack in coverage grade when it comes to their cornerback position and the EPA per play pass allowed that they have had so far this season. This was their biggest area of weakness. There's no question about it. And they addressed it in the strongest way that they possibly could have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think when you look at when Charvarius Ward is healthy, if you look at a starting 3 of Sauce, Ward, and Kenny Moore, that's as good as it gets in the NFL. I mean, Sauce alone makes your cornerback room excellent, right? He's the best, in my opinion, he's the best cornerback in football. He's just lights out. And now when you look at Lou Anarumo and all the creative things that he can do in this defense, if he wants to go man-to-man now, he can absolutely do it with Sauce out there, right? It's thought to be a zone-heavy defense. And, you look at the way their safeties have played this year. They've been fine. Linebacker, still a little bit of a weakness, but certainly good enough in there with Zaire Franklin and those guys. I think if you can get Charvarius Ward healthy for the stretch run and into the playoffs, and you have Sauce, Ward, and Moore as your front 3, that's an incredible group right there. Kenny Moore is one of the best nickels in football. Charvarius Ward, we've been targeting all offseason as a perfect fit in this defense. And now the fact that they can get in man-to-man situations with Sauce anytime they want, and they can run a shadow coverage on, say a guy like, again, Nico Collins or all these receivers that they're going to face in the AFC, I think it really is something that it changes. This is a player now. 2 first-round picks is heavy, but if you're going to give up 2 first-round picks for a defensive player, it has to be somebody like a Jalen Ramsey back in the day with the Rams, like a Micah Parsons with the Packers. It has to change the complexion of your defense. Sauce Gardner is in that category. If you don't have him as the best corner in football, he's no lower than second or third, right? And I mean, he's just a game changer on that side of the ball. And again, to go from the weakness that they've had so far to just drop Sauce Gardner, right? First of all, this wasn't even fathomable before it actually happened. It made almost no sense that, okay, the Jets have everybody available except for Sauce and Garrett, right? Well, apparently not, because the Colts really feel like they're in it, and it does. It changes the entire complexion of their secondary, of their defense. And honestly, Trev, when you're better on the back end like that too, that's an emerging pass rush they have. You have Buckner on the inside. Latu's becoming a star right in front of us. I mean, this is a game-changing move defensively for the Colts, because they already have the most efficient offense in football. They couldn't get any better there anyway.
Last one here. Argene Louise, $5 super chat, says trading first-round picks for non-quarterbacks or pass rushers is always a dumb idea. Teams need to stop trading premium picks. Trust me, I know, as a Saints fan. Well, it hasn't worked out for the Saints. There's no question about it. But Colts are all in. Colts are all in here. And very clearly the Jets are all in on whatever their next chapter is going to be.